The nature of the problem. In large measure, becoming an artist consists of learning to accept yourself, which makes your work personal, and in following your own voice makes your work distinctive. Something about making art has to do with overcoming things, giving us clear opportunity for doing things in ways we have always known we should do them. Art provides uncomfortably accurate feedback about the gap that inevitably exists between what you intended to do and what you did. To you and you alone, what matters is the process, the experience of shaping that artwork. Art and fear. Artists don't get down to work until the pain of working is exceeded by the pain of not working. Stefan de Stebler. Basically, those who continue to make art are those who have learned how to continue, or more precisely, have learned how not to quit. And artists quit when they lose the destination for their work, for the place their work belongs. Avoiding this fate has something to do with not letting your current goal become your only goal. With individual artworks, it means leaving some loose thread, some unresolved issue to carry forward and explore in the next piece. With larger goals, like monographs or major shows, it means always carrying within you the seed crystal for your next destination. What separates artists from ex-artists is that those who challenge their fears continue, those who don't quit. Each step in the art-making process puts that issue to the test. Lesson for the day. Vision is always ahead of execution, and it should be. Vision, uncertainty, and knowledge of materials are inevitabilities that all artists must acknowledge and learn from. Vision is always ahead of execution, knowledge of materials is your contact with reality, and uncertainty is a virtue. Art is like beginning a sentence before you know its ending. Uncertainty is the essential, inevitable, and all-pervasive companion to your desire to make art, and tolerance for uncertainty is the prerequisite to succeeding. Fears about yourself. We have met the enemy, and he is us. Pogo. In a general way, fears about yourself prevent you from doing your best work, while fears about your reception by others prevent you from doing your own work. The depth of your need to make things establishes the level of risk in not making them. Put simply, your work is your guide, a complete, comprehensive, limitless reference book on your work. There is no such other book, and it is yours alone. It functions this way for no one else. The lessons you are meant to learn are in your work. Fears about others. Don't look back. Something might be gaining on you. Satchel Paige. Andrew Wyeth pursued his Helga series privately for years, working at his own pace, away from the spotlight of criticism and suggestion that would otherwise have accompanied the release of each new piece in the series. Such respites also, perhaps, allow the finished work time to find its rightful place in the artist's heart and mind. That example is extreme, but the general caveat still applies. Acceptance and approval are powers held by others, whether they be friends, classmates, curators, or author of the definitive history of your chosen medium. The lesson here is simply that courting approval, even that of peers, puts a dangerous amount of power in the hands of the audience. Worse yet, the audience is seldom in a position to grant or withhold approval on the one issue that really counts, namely, whether or not you're making progress in your work. The only pure communication is between you and your work. Finding your work. You could not step twice into the same river, for other waters are ever flowing onto you. Heraclitus. The truly special moments in art making lie in those moments when concept is converted to reality, those moments when the gulf is being crossed. If, indeed, for any given time, only a certain sort of work resonates with life, then that is the work you need to be doing in that moment. If you try to do some other work, you will miss your moment. When things go haywire, your best opening strategy might be to return very carefully and consciously to the habits and practices in play the last time you felt good about the work. Changing the pattern of outcome in your work means first identifying things about your approach that are as automatic as wedging the clay, as subtle as releasing the arrow from the bow. A piece of art is the surface expression of a life lived within productive patterns. The academic world. When my daughter was about 7 years old, she asked me one day what I did at work. I told her I worked at the college, that my job was to teach people how to draw. She stared back at me, incredulous, and said, "You mean they forget?" Howard Akimoto. Your life is a paradigm of the process of being an artist, a witness and record to the way time and circumstance, event and emotion, courage and fear surround the making of art. Your experiences provide an affirmation to younger artists that the path they have chosen does lead somewhere, and that you are all really fellow travelers, separated only by the time you've already traveled down that path. What artists learn from other artists is not so much history or technique, although we learn tons of that too. What we really gain from the art making of others is courage by association. Depth of contact grows as fears are shared and thereby disarmed, and this comes from embracing art as process and artists as kindred spirits. To the artist, art is a verb. Conceptual worlds. The answers you get depend upon the questions you ask. Thomas Kuhn. To the viewer who has little emotional investment in how the work gets done, art made primarily to display technical virtuosity is often beautiful, striking, elegant, and vacant. Simply put, art that deals with ideas is more interesting than art that deals with technique. In essence, art lies embedded in the conceptual leap between pieces, not in the pieces themselves. And simply put, there's a greater conceptual jump from one work of art to the next than from one work of craft to the next. Yet curiously, the progression of most artists' work over time is a progression from art toward craft. The difference between art and craft lies not in the tools you hold in your hands, but in the mental set that guides them. For the artisan, craft is an end in itself. For you, the artist, craft is the vehicle for expressing your vision. Craft is the visible edge of art. If art is to nourish consciousness, habitual reactions must be encouraged as well as questioned. Viewed closely, however, style is not a virtue, it is an inevitability, the inescapable result of doing anything more than a few times. The habitual gestures of the artist appear throughout any body of work developed enough to be called a body of work. Style is not an aspect of good work, it is an aspect of all work. Style is the natural consequence of habit. The need to make art may not stem solely from the need to express who you are, but from the need to complete a relationship with something outside yourself. Art is contact, and your work necessarily reveals the nature of that contact. In making art, you declare what is important. Your work is the source for the unaccountably large number of such relationships, and these relationships in turn are a primary source of the richness and complexity in your art. The human voice. Computers are useless. All they can give you are the answers. Pablo Picasso. Equally, there is no ready vocabulary to describe the ways in which artists become artists, no recognition that artists must learn to be who they are, even as they cannot help being who they are. Your job is to draw a line from your life to your art that is straight and clear. This sense of interior stability is consistent with one widely observable truth. The arc to any individual life is uniform over long periods of time. Subjects that draw us in will continue to draw us in. Patterns we respond to, we will continue to respond to. We are compelled by forces that, like the ocean current, are so subtle and pervasive, we take them utterly for granted. Those odd moments when we notice the sea we swim in leave us as surprised as the discovery by Moliere's character that he was speaking prose, that indeed he had always spoken prose. We tell the stories we have to tell, stories of the things that draw us in. And why should any of us have more than a handful of those? The only work really worth doing, the only work you can do convincingly, is the work that focuses on the things you care about. To not focus on those issues is to deny the constants in your life. What veteran artists share in common is that they have learned how to get on with their work. Simply put, artists learn how to proceed or they don't. The individual recipe any artist finds for proceeding belongs to that artist alone. It's non-transferable and of little use to others. You have to find your work all over again, all the time. And to do that, you have to give yourself maneuvering room on many fronts: mental, physical, temporal. Experience consists of being able to reoccupy useful space easily, instantly.